You ever get that weird tingly sense that someone's eyes are on you, even when you think you're alone? That was me last Tuesday night, standing under the hot spray of our shared apartment's crappy shower head, mid-rinse, eyes closed, thinking about nothing. I wasn't expecting anyone to be home. My roommate, Evan, had said he'd be out with his girlfriend that night, which meant I had the place to myself. Rare, glorious peace. I could take my time, blast music, walk around the apartment half naked without anyone making a joke, but I should have known better. See, Evan and I have lived together for just over a year. We're both 24, post-college, trying to make it in the city. He's in marketing, tall, naturally athletic, one of those guys who always looks effortlessly good even when he's just rolled out of bed. Meanwhile, I'm the one who spends an hour trying to fix my hair just to look presentable on a Zoom call. We weren't best friends when we moved in, just mutuals from college with enough common friends to make the idea of sharing rent tolerable. Over time, we became close, comfortable. We'd hang out on weekends, split takeout, even crash on the couch watching Netflix. But I always kept a part of myself guarded because Evan was, as far as I knew, very straight. Still, I'd be lying if I said I never noticed him, or the way he walked around the apartment shirtless after a run, or how he'd sometimes sit a little too close on the couch when we were watching movies. I chalked it up to straight guy comfort. Some guys are just touchy, right? But that night, things shifted. I just lathered up my hair when I heard it. A subtle sound, the lightest creak. It was quick, almost dismissible. Could have been the building settling, or the pipes, or whatever. But then I felt it, that tingle, that feeling of being watched. My eyes popped open. Through the fogged up glass, barely visible, I saw the faintest shadow near the edge of the bathroom door. Not moving, just there. The door had been closed when I got in. I was sure of it, but now it was cracked just slightly, and someone was standing just beyond it. My stomach flipped. My breath caught for a second. I didn't say anything. I should have. But instead, I did something else. I kept going. I let my hands slide slowly down my chest, rinsing the soap away. Turned slightly toward the door, just enough so if someone really was watching, they'd get a better view. My heart pounded in my ears. Was it Evan? Was I being crazy? Was I testing him? I stood like that for a beat too long. And then the shadow moved. The door shut quietly. Soft click. Gone. My legs felt weak. I leaned against the shower wall, steam curling around me, and just breathed. What the hell had just happened? Was that real? Had Evan been watching me? My head spun with questions. I toweled off quickly, trying to act normal, trying to convince myself maybe I was just tired, maybe it was nothing, maybe the door hadn't been all the way latched. Maybe I'd imagined the shadow, the sound, but then I stepped into the hallway and froze. Evan's door, usually open, was closed. I stared at it, heart thudding, and for the briefest moment, I swear I heard movement. Soft footsteps, like someone shifting on a bed. I stood there, dripping onto the hardwood floor, half dressed in a towel, every part of me buzzing, and then I did something that would change everything. I knocked. There was a pause, just long enough to make me consider backing out, before I heard his voice. "Yeah?" Evan called from inside. Calm. Too calm. I opened the door slowly. He was lying on his bed, one arm behind his head, the other resting across his chest, scrolling on his phone like nothing was off. He glanced up and did a double take when he saw me standing there in just a towel. Hey, what's up?" he asked, like it was totally normal for me to show up half naked at his door. I leaned against the frame, trying to keep my tone casual. "Thought you were going out tonight." Evan shrugged, setting his phone down. "Changed my mind. Megan had to cancel. Family stuff." "Ah," I said, nodding. "So, you've been home this whole time?" His eyes flicked to mine. A beat passed. "Yeah," he said slowly. "Why?" I opened my mouth, closed it. My brain couldn't decide if I was looking for a confession or just testing him. "No reason," I said finally. "Just thought I was alone." His brow lifted slightly. "Did I freak you out or something?" "Kind of," I admitted, stepping inside. I thought I heard something while I was in the shower. He sat up a little straighter. Like what? Like, I wasn't alone. His lips pressed together, a small twitch at the corner. Not quite a smile. Not quite not. I took a breath. Did you come in the bathroom? He didn't answer right away. Just looked at me. Studied me. I thought you were out, I added quickly, as if that explained anything. More silence. And then, finally, Evan stood up from the bed, walked slowly toward me. He stopped just a foot away, close enough to feel the heat between us, but not touching. I did, he said. My breath caught. He didn't elaborate, just said it plainly, like admitting he'd forgotten to take the trash out. I didn't move. Why? Evan's gaze dropped for a second, to my bare chest, then the towel, then back up to my eyes. His jaw worked like he was weighing something, trying to decide how much to give away. I don't know, he said, voice quiet. I heard the water, door wasn't locked, I just looked. I swallowed hard. He looked at me again, and this time something flickered in his eyes. Uncertainty maybe, or guilt, or something closer to desire. I wasn't trying to be a creep, he added, almost offensively. It just happened. I should have been mad. Should have called him out. Should have made it awkward. But instead, I stepped forward, closing the already minimal space between us. I saw you, I said. His eyes widened. Wait, what? I saw the door. I clarified. I saw the shadow. I knew someone was there. Evan went pale for half a second. And you kept going? I nodded. Yeah. The air between us turned electric. We stood like that, frozen, both of us breathing just a little too hard. And then Evan laughed, a low, nervous sound. Jesus, he muttered, running a hand through his hair. I thought you were gonna punch me or something. I stepped closer, and he didn't back up. What if I wasn't mad? I asked. He looked up at me again. This time there was no twitch in his jaw, no smirk, just open confusion and interest. What does that mean? He asked. I shrugged. I don't know. You tell me. He stared for a moment longer. Then his hand lifted, slowly, hesitantly, and brushed against the edge of the towel where it met my hip. It wasn't bold. It wasn't cocky. It was testing. I didn't stop him. We stayed like that, him looking at me like he was seeing me for the first time, like he didn't know what to do with this version of us, like he was torn between backing away and leaning in. Finally, he said, "This is new." Is it? I asked, quieter now. Or are we just finally admitting it? He didn't respond, not with words. Instead, he leaned in. I'd spent a year trying to stop myself from thinking about this exact moment. Evan, this close, his breath brushing against mine, his eyes flicking to my mouth like he wasn't sure if he was about to make a mistake or finally do something right. And then he did it. He kissed me. It wasn't aggressive, not some dramatic Hollywood swoop. It was hesitant, careful, like he was checking to see if I'd push him away. But I didn't. I leaned in. His lips were warm. He tasted faintly like mint and the lingering beer he must have had before I got out of the shower. For a moment, we didn't move. Just lips pressed together, our bodies closed but not touching. Then I felt his hand slide up my side, his fingers brushing against damp skin, and something in me snapped. I reached up and grabbed the front of his shirt, pulling him closer. That broke whatever hesitation was left. Evan deepened the kiss, suddenly more sure of himself. His hands gripped my waist, one sliding around to my lower back, and he pulled me against him. The towel between us barely counted as a barrier. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. And then he broke away. Just slightly. We shouldn't, he whispered, but his hands didn't move. Then stop, I whispered back. He didn't. Instead, he kissed me again, harder this time, more urgent. Like something had finally snapped inside him. Like he'd spent as long as I had, wondering what this would be like. And God, it was better than I'd imagined. I felt his fingers slip under the edge of the towel, brushing my hip bone, and every inch of my skin lit up. But then, I don't know why, I pulled back, just a little. Evan froze instantly. Did I go too far? I shook my head. No. I need to know something. His brows knit together, his breathing ragged. Okay. I looked at him, really looked. What is this, Evan? Is this just a heat of the moment thing? Because I can't do this if it's just curiosity. He looked away for the first time, ran a hand through his hair. I don't know, he said quietly. I didn't plan this. I didn't think I don't even know what I'm doing. I didn't think you'd see me. I didn't think you'd kiss me back. You didn't think I'd want you? He looked back at me then, and this time there was something raw in his expression. No, he said. I was hoping you would, but I wasn't sure. The air between us shifted again, slowed. We weren't touching now, just standing in the middle of his room, both of us half exposed in different ways. He sat down on the edge of the bed, suddenly looking exhausted. I've never done anything like this before, he said. With a guy? With you. That hit different. I sat beside him, let our knees brush. He didn't move away. I don't want to be some experiment, I said, quieter now. You're not. We sat there for a long minute, both of us staring ahead. Like if we looked at each other too long, it would all unravel. Finally, Evan spoke again. When I walked by the bathroom, I didn't mean to look. I swear. But then I saw you through the glass, and I couldn't move. I just stood there. I don't know what came over me. Did it freak you out? I asked. He glanced at me. No, that's what freaked me out. We both laughed, but it was a nervous, unsteady kind of laugh. The kind you let out when you're afraid to admit what's really happening. I'm not saying I have everything figured out, Evan said, but I know I didn't want to look away. And I know I don't regret kissing you. I nodded. Good. Because neither do I. His hand found mine, just resting there between us. No pressure, just connection. And we sat like that until the tension turned into something else. Something deeper. Something that scared me a little. In the best way. We didn't sleep together that night. Not in the way people might assume. But Evan did pull back the sheets on his bed and motion for me to lie down beside him. I hesitated for a second. Then I climbed in. We lay there, side by side, fully clothed now. The room was quiet, except for the low hum of the city outside the window and our uneven breathing. It was strange how close we felt without touching. The kind of closeness you don't build in a single night, but one that reveals itself when the walls start to come down. Evan finally broke the silence. I think I've always noticed you, he said. My eyes shifted to him, surprised. What do you mean? He stared at the ceiling, arms crossed behind his head. Like, back in school, you were always the guy who had your shit together. Quiet, but not in a boring way. You were just yourself. I always liked that. You had a girlfriend, Evan, I said, not accusing, just honest. Yeah, I did. Still not sure what that says about me. It doesn't have to say anything. I offered. You don't owe anyone a label. He turned his head to look at me. Not even you? That question hit deeper than I expected. It lingered in the air, and I could feel him waiting for an answer. I swallowed. I just want honesty. Whatever this is, or might be, I can handle it if it's real. I just can't handle being a phase. You're not a phase, he said immediately, like he'd already thought about that. That's what scares me. We laid there in the dark, words heavier now. The atmosphere between us shifting again. This wasn't just about attraction anymore. Something real had cracked open. Eventually, Evan turned on his side to face me, one arm propped under his head. Can I ask you something? Yeah. Back in the shower when you realized I was watching, why didn't you stop? I stared at him for a second before answering. Because I wanted you to keep looking. His breath caught. I could hear it. Is that messed up? I asked with a small laugh, trying to diffuse the tension. No, he said. It's hot. That made me laugh for real, and it cracked something between us. Some tension, some boundary. Evan leaned closer, slowly, and this time when he kissed me, it felt different. Softer. Familiar. I let my fingers graze the hem of his shirt, unsure of where to stop. He didn't pull away, just rested his hand over mine and whispered, "Not tonight." "Okay," I whispered back. We stayed like that, facing each other, barely touching, sharing the same breath until our bodies relaxed into the same rhythm. And when I finally fell asleep, it wasn't with questions or confusion or fear. It was with a strange, quiet calm. Because for the first time since moving in with Evan, I didn't feel like I had to hide. And the next morning, everything was different, but not in the way I expected. I woke up to sunlight streaking through the blinds and the quiet rustle of movement beside me. Evan was already sitting up, his hair messy, his back to me. He had that freshly woken stillness about him, like his body hadn't decided what kind of day it was going to be. For a moment, I just watched him, his shoulders, the way he sat with one knee pulled up, absent-mindedly rubbing the back of his neck. He must have heard me stir, because he turned slightly and offered a sleepy half-smile. "Hey, morning," I said, voice groggy. He stood and stretched, letting out a low groan that, if I'm being honest, made my stomach tighten in a way it probably shouldn't have that early in the morning. He padded out of the room in boxers and a t-shirt, and I just lay there, wondering if last night had really happened. It had. I could still feel it in my chest. That warmth. That quiet understanding. The way he'd kissed me like it meant something. When I finally got up, I found him in the kitchen making coffee, his usual morning routine unchanged. But as I walked in, he looked at me differently, like he'd made some kind of decision. "I made extra," he said, holding out a mug. "Thanks," I said, taking it. Our fingers brushed. Nothing dramatic, just enough to remind me that the barrier between us had shifted. We sipped in silence for a while before I finally asked, "So what now?" Evan leaned against the counter, thinking. "I don't know. I didn't expect any of this. I spent months convincing myself I didn't feel what I felt. And now?" He looked at me with a strange kind of vulnerability. "Now I just don't want to mess it up." I set my mug down. "Then don't." Simple, honest. We had breakfast like we always did. Eggs, toast, his weird obsession with hot sauce on everything. It felt normal, and that was the strangest part. There was no awkwardness, but the moment I stood behind him to grab a plate and his back pressed lightly into my chest, we both paused. He didn't move. Neither did I. Then he turned his head slightly and said, low and easy, "You're close." "Yeah," I said. He smirked. "You're doing it on purpose." "Maybe." Evan turned, eyes scanning mine, and suddenly we were kissing again, this time right in the middle of the kitchen, sunlight pouring through the windows. His hands found my waist, mine slipped into his hair, and for a few seconds, nothing else existed. It wasn't until we heard a knock at the door that we jumped apart. Evan cleared his throat, adjusting his shirt. I blinked, still catching my breath. He opened the door to reveal Megan, his girlfriend, or ex-girlfriend. That part wasn't totally clear. She stood there, holding a coffee tray, clearly expecting to surprise him. "Oh," she said, eyes flicking between us. Evan froze. "Shit." The mood shattered like glass. "Hey," he said, voice tight. "I didn't know you were coming." "Clearly," she replied, and her eyes shifted to me for just a moment. And just like that, the soft, quiet thing we'd shared cracked under the weight of the real world. The silence that followed was suffocating. Evan stood there, half in the doorway, half shielding me from view like that, would somehow soften whatever she had just seen. I wasn't sure what her expression meant. Confusion, hurt, maybe suspicion, but it made my stomach twist. "I brought you coffee," Megan said finally, holding up the tray, though her voice had lost any warmth. Evan cleared his throat. "Thanks, but we're kind of in the middle of something." Her gaze slid past him, locking onto mine. I didn't flinch. I didn't hide. "Oh," she said, voice cool. "I can see that." Evan stepped outside and pulled the door halfway closed behind him. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught phrases. Wasn't planned. "We need to talk." I didn't want to lie. Her voice was sharper than his, but not angry. Not yet. Just surprised. I sank onto the couch, heart racing. My hands were still sticky from breakfast, but I didn't move. I just listened. After a few minutes, the door opened again, and Evan came back inside, shutting it softly behind him. He didn't say anything right away, just leaned back against the door like he was bracing for something. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded, slowly. "Yeah." I told her. "Told her what?" He looked at me. "That, I'm not sure where I'm going, but I know it's not with her anymore." I sat back, exhaling. "That couldn't have been easy." "It wasn't," he said, moving toward me, "but it felt honest." He dropped onto the couch beside me and rubbed his face with both hands. I should have ended it before, way before, but I kept pretending everything was fine. I didn't want to deal with what it would mean if it wasn't. "And what does it mean now?" Evan looked at me, then reached out and laced his fingers through mine. "It means I'm not running from this." That one simple gesture, his hand in mine, carried more weight than anything else we'd said. It felt like a decision. We spent the rest of the day together, doing nothing in particular, watching bad TV, sharing leftover pasta, sitting close without constantly checking over our shoulders. There were no grand speeches, no sudden declarations, just small, steady things. That night, as we got ready for bed, Evan walked into my room without knocking. "Mind if I stay in here again?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, smirking. "You've been watching me in the shower, stealing my breakfast. Now you want my bed too?" He grinned. "What can I say? I'm greedy." We lay down like we had the night before. Close, but this time with less hesitation. His arm found my waist. My hand found his. And we fell asleep that way, tangled in something new and fragile. When I woke up in the middle of the night, Evan was still there, snoring softly into my neck. And somehow, it felt more real than anything I'd ever known. The next few days felt like walking a tightrope, balancing the thrill of something new with the constant fear that it might all collapse. Living with Evan now meant stolen glances across the kitchen, brushing fingers when we reached for the same drawer, and that strange electricity humming between us every time we passed each other in the hallway. It also meant figuring out how to exist in the same space without labels, without expectations, without anyone else knowing. But the quiet intimacy grew in ways I hadn't expected. It was in the way he'd start making enough coffee for two without asking, or the way he'd nudge his foot against mine under the couch while we watched movies. We hadn't talked much about what was happening between us. We just let it happen until Friday night. We were sitting in the living room, half watching a dumb action movie, half just existing next to each other. My feet were in his lap. His hand was resting on my ankle. It felt easy. And then, out of nowhere, Evan said, "Do you think this is real?" I turned to him. "What do you mean?" "This thing, us." He looked nervous for the first time in days. I don't want to screw it up, but I also don't want it to be some weird phase that we both regret later. I studied him. His expression open, vulnerable. "I don't think it's a phase," I said, "and I don't think I'll regret this. I'm just scared of pushing too hard, of wanting more than you're ready to give." He nodded slowly, eyes locked on mine. "I don't think I've ever felt this safe with someone." That one hit me, because it wasn't romantic or dramatic. It was just real. "I feel that too," I said. We didn't kiss then. We didn't need to. We just sat there, letting the words settle between us. Something about naming it, about saying it out loud, made it feel more solid. The next morning, Evan surprised me again. He knocked on my door, not barged in like usual. When I opened it, he was already dressed, shoes on, keys in hand. "Come with me," he said. I blinked, half asleep. "Where?" He just smiled. "You'll see." We ended up at this little park near the river, one I used to bike past all the time but never actually stopped at. He brought coffee. I brought nothing except confusion. "What are we doing?" I asked, sipping my drink. Evan looked around, then back at me. "I want to try something." My heart kicked up a little. "Okay." He stepped closer. "I want to stop pretending that I don't care what people think." Before I could respond, he leaned in and kissed me, soft, quick, and completely out in the open. There were joggers nearby, a family with a stroller, some guy walking his dog. But Evan didn't care, and for the first time, neither did I. When he pulled back, he looked nervous. "Too much?" I shook my head. "Just enough." We stood there for a minute, side by side, facing the water. He bumped his shoulder against mine. I bumped back. "I've never been with a guy," he said softly, "but it doesn't feel like I'm with a guy." I turned to him, curious. "What does it feel like?" He smiled. "It feels like I'm with you." That line, that exact moment, is when I knew I was in deep, and I wasn't scared anymore. 3 weeks later, it was hard to remember how we used to live before everything changed. Our apartment still looked the same. Mismatched furniture, a slowly dying houseplant on the windowsill, the same scratch on the coffee table from that one time Evan tried assembling IKEA furniture without reading the manual. But the energy was different now. It was in the way Evan would kiss me on the shoulder while brushing past me on his way to the fridge, or how he'd curl up behind me in bed without saying a word. Sometimes he'd still joke, "Don't get used to this," just before sliding under the covers like he wasn't the one initiating it half the time. We hadn't put a label on anything yet, and honestly, I didn't care. One night, I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth when I caught Evan watching me in the mirror. He was leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, a little smirk on his face. "What?" I mumbled, mouth full of toothpaste. He shrugged. "Just thinking." "Dangerous," I said. He grinned. "Remember the night I watched you in the shower?" I turned and raised an eyebrow. "Hard to forget." He stepped closer, voice softer. That was the first time I realized I wanted something I didn't think I was allowed to want. I rinsed my mouth and leaned against the counter. "And now?" He moved in until we were chest to chest. "Now I want it every day." I kissed him then, slow and unhurried. The kind of kiss that said we had time, that we weren't rushing anything. That night we lay in bed with the window cracked open, the hum of the city rolling in from the street below. Evan was on his back, one hand resting lightly on my stomach. "You ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't gotten caught?" he asked quietly. "You mean if you'd never gotten busted perving on your roommate in the shower?" He chuckled, shaking his head. "Yeah, that." I thought about it for a second. "Maybe we'd still be dancing around each other, you still pretending you're straight, me still keeping my mouth shut." "Glad we're past that," he said. I turned toward him. "Me too." A long pause. Then Evan added, "Still gonna keep watching you shower, though." I laughed, burying my face in his chest. "Not if I lock the door first." But I didn't, and he never needed to sneak again, because somehow, through one cracked door and a single bold moment, we'd found something real, something warm, something worth breaking the rules for.